Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime as Liverpool take on Arsenal on Saturday afternoon at 4:30 at Wembley in the curtain-raising match of the 2020-21 season. 2019-20 has barely ended. Jordan Henderson has barely taken his hands off of the Premier League trophy, and already we are going again. We are in the hunt for more silverware, of course. There is always this debate over whether the Community Shield's a major trophy and how important it actually is, and whether you can count it in things like trebles or doubles at the end of the season. Jurgen Klopp has said in his pre-match press conference that he sees this as a trophy. He sees this as a proper match. Whenever, I think this happened last season as well when we were in the Community Shield, he brought up how it's a massive deal in Germany. This the corresponding fixture between the league champions and the domestic cup champions. Over there, it's seen as huge, and it is seen as a proper trophy. Here, no one really seems to know exactly how to view it. I know in terms of major honours, it doesn't get counted. It's of course not on Liverpool's wall of champions, and in this ongoing thing between us and Man United to see who's the most successful club in England, the Community Shield doesn't come into it, partially because of all the things about how it wasn't always contested between the league champions and the domestic cup champions. Sometimes teams such as the third division champions have been invited into it, and at one point in the 70s, Man City played in it despite finishing fourth the season before and without getting any silverware. And of course, before, I think it was 1990 or something like that, it used to be that if the match ended as a draw after 90 minutes, the trophy was shared as well. So there are cases where both teams have actually won the Community Shield in a single year. So it's not seen as a major honour in that sense, but it is something for Liverpool to win. It's an opportunity to get one over a team that is a reasonably close rival of us at Wembley as well, which is a place we've never really done that well, certainly not since the rebuild. I think we've only actually won one game there outside of league matches. Of course, we won there when Spurs were playing there as their home ground, and of course we won a friendly there against Barcelona. But in competitive matches outside of the league, so those cup games that are one-off matches that mean so much, I'm pretty sure we've only won one game at Wembley, and that was of course the 2-1 win against Everton way back in 2012 in the FA Cup semi-final. So it's a chance to put a sort of a demon to bed there, and of course Arsenal have a great record at the new Wembley Stadium, so it's the kind of team that you want to play in those circumstances. So going into the match, in terms of injury news, Klopp said that a lot of players are good, but not necessarily available for this game. Names that were mentioned in that bracket were Jordan Henderson, who of course missed the end of last season, Oxlade-Chamberlain, who picked up an injury in pre-season, and Xherdan Shaqiri, who's just been missing for God knows how long. But all of them, he said, are in a good moment. They're not quite ready yet, but hopefully that means that they are progressing well and will be able to play some part. Maybe not as soon as the season starts in 2 weeks' time, but certainly as the amount of games starts to ratchet up, and that will certainly start to happen pretty quickly, those players will come back into contention to help bolster the squad. But they're not going to be available for this match. Trent Alexander-Arnold is a player that I think a lot of people are very interested in as to whether he's going to be available. He hasn't played any part really in pre-season so far, but Klopp did say in his press conference today that the test for whether he will play in the game against Arsenal will be made tomorrow. It'll be made on the day of the game. So they're cutting it very, very fine with that one. I think potentially that's a little bit to do with how Nico Williams has performed in pre-season. I don't think he's necessarily performed badly, but given that he's often started as a member of what you'd call the first team, and for both of the pre-season friendlies, we've started with pretty much a full strength 11. He has looked ever so slightly like the weak link, and both teams have sort of targeted that side when Nico Williams and the rest of the first 11 have been on the pitch. So maybe Jurgen Klopp is a little bit worried about, coming up against a team that are as good as Arsenal, who are as good at counter-attacking as Arsenal. They've got a lot of pace down those sides, and if Nico Williams leaves space, and of course we know I'm going to come on to a bit more about how Arsenal are going to play in the tactical battle later on, but given the way they play, he's probably going to want to push forward, and as a result he could be leaving space in behind him as well. So that's possibly why Jurgen Klopp is maybe a little bit more keen to get Trent Alexander-Arnold on the pitch. But personally, I think under the circumstances, with him not having trained, we have to be very, very careful with how we handle players' fitness this season, because of the way it's going to pan out, because of how congested the fixtures are, and because of the rather strange break that players have had where, they have obviously had this month or 5 week or even 6 week gap between since the end of last season, but that's not really the usual amount, and of course they're in a very strange rhythm, nothing that they're really used to at the moment. So personally, I think it's a little bit risky to even be thinking about playing Trent, but of course I don't go to the training ground every day. I'm not a sports scientist working for Liverpool at the moment, so I trust them to make the right call on that. Virgil van Dijk also came off against Salzburg with an injury to his eye, I believe it was. He got a little bit of a cut, so it was bleeding during the game. He is absolutely fine, which is absolutely fantastic, because of course we can't be losing Virgil van Dijk at any stage in the season, no matter whether it's the Charity Shield or the Champions League final. We need that man on the pitch regardless. Elsewhere, Jurgen Klopp also spoke about Ryan Brewster, who has of course had a very positive pre-season so far. He's only played I'm not even sure it's 2 full 45s. I believe he came on about half an hour in to the game against Salzburg, and in that time, as well as the 45 minutes he got against Stuttgart, he's already bagged 3 goals. Now, of course, he did do this in pre-season last season as well, and it's something that a lot of people are talking about as to whether Ryan Brewster is sort of feeling a little bit too much pressure to score when he comes on in competitive matches. It certainly seemed to be the case, I think, when you look back to games in the early parts of last season. You look at like the League Cup match and stuff like that. I think he felt like he had to be the talisman. He had to be getting goals, because if he wasn't scoring, then he was going to have no chance to force his way into the team. But of course, if he wants to play at number 9 for Liverpool, then he's got to do so much more than score. It's not all about but getting goals. It's about linking up with the front 3. And I think hopefully that's what we are going to see in this particular match. Is Ryan Brewster, who Jurgen Klopp has said is definitely going to be in the squad, and we've heard things about them planning to make sure he plays some part in the game. Will hopefully not only get to play a part in the game, but also will do so alongside another 2 members of the front 3. Now, typically you'd expect that to be him in the middle, Mane on the left, and Salah on the right. It could potentially be Brewster on the right and Firmino stays on the pitch as well, just to see whether Brewster can be a little bit more versatile and can be deployed in multiple positions. And also, of course, if you put him out on the wings, you don't necessarily have to have him worrying so much about scoring, because he's there then expected to do a slightly different role. He's expected to link up a little bit more, and it might take the pressure off him a little bit, because like I said, I think in those competitive fixtures, he seems to feel the pressure a bit, and he almost seems to play within himself. He seems to also play like maybe 5 yards higher up the pitch, because he wants to be getting in behind. He wants to be getting goal scoring chances rather than dropping deep and linking up a little bit more. So it would be great to see Ryan Brewster in this match. There's also all this chat about him potentially moving to Sheffield United on loan for the season, and apparently after the Community Shield, during the international break that comes before the Premier League season kicks off, that is when Jurgen Klopp and his coaching staff are going to make a solid decision of whether to loan Ryan Brewster out or not. So I think this game will definitely inform it. I think that's why they want to get him on the pitch. So I certainly think he's going to get at least half an hour. As for whether he starts or not, let's go on to the starting 11 for the game. Now, I think Alisson is, of course, nailed on starting goal. Adrian's had a perfectly solid pre-season, which is nice to see. Of course, his last outing in a Liverpool shirt was the game against Atletico, and it didn't exactly go to plan, I think it's fair to say, and I think it had a few people saying that he wasn't good enough to be Liverpool's backup goalie, but since then he's been absolutely fine in pre-season. Of course, before that as well, we had absolutely no problems with him whatsoever, apart from a slightly iffy performance against Chelsea in the FA Cup, and I think for your backup goalie, he did more than enough to warrant a stay in this Liverpool side for another season. So while he's been good, I don't think he's going to play in this game, because Alisson is, of course, absolutely brilliant and probably the best goalie in the world. So I think he starts between the sticks. Ahead of him, Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez have been partnering each other in pre-season, so I think they continue. Andrew Robertson as well, I think, starts the game. Of course, we've got Kostas Tsimikas coming in, so it'd be quite nice to see a little bit of him, according to the Charity Shield or Community? It's the Community Shield now. It was the Charity Shield. It got changed in 2002. I had to look it up before the game while I was looking up the rules as well. And the rules are you can make 6 substitutions. So it's going to be a little bit similar, I think, to last season. I don't know whether they've got the same rule where you have to make them in certain chunks, but that certainly means that I think we're maybe going to see a few more players that Jurgen Klopp will be using on a slightly more rotational basis this season, rather than just players that he's going to be expecting to start week in, week out. And I think Tsimikas will be one of those, so it'll be nice to see him get on the pitch. And of course, it will be a test against that very pacey, counter-attacking Arsenal side to see what he can do. But I think Robertson will start. I do think Williams will start on the right as well. I think it's just too risky with Trent to throw him straight back in if he hasn't been training, if he's been away from the side. You know, Williams, like I said, he's had his difficulties in pre-season. He's been exposed every now and then. he's only going to get better if you play him more. And, you know, if he makes those mistakes, the worst thing you can always do at this moment is take him out the side. The best thing to do is get him back on that pitch and tell him to, you know, put them behind him, to develop, to grow. I'm not saying this like, you know, these are massive errors that are going to haunt him forever. It's just a couple of pre-season games where he's been, you know, found out on that side a couple of times. But of course, he is going to want to improve. He's going to want to avoid those situations. It's the same thing that happened with Trent at the start of his Liverpool career. And we kept playing him. We kept playing him in big games as well, like those Champions League quarter-final games against Man City, and it did him the world of good. It made him the player he is today. So if we want to have a similar trajectory for Nico Williams, then I think you've got to keep him in the side for this game. And yeah, absolutely, if Trent is fit, give him half an hour, maybe even give him 45 minutes. We saw after the restart, Nico Williams played quite a few games where he'd only do 45 minutes, and I think that was because he was being rotated in both right back and left back positions to give rests to Andrew Robertson and Trent AlexanderArnold. And I think we maybe see something similar in this Community Shield match, and I think Nico Williams will start, but I will expect to see Trent AlexanderArnold at some point. And then ahead of them, Fabinho, another player who's had a little bit of an iffy pre-season. You know, I think one of the goals, I think it was the second goal against Salzburg, was almost definitely his fault. He just got caught napping on the ball in a dangerous area. But again, you've got to play him into form. This is that we haven't got many chances to get the players into form before the Premier League season starts. And I know the Community Shield is a trophy and it's silverware in its own right, and we should be taking it seriously. But the Premier League is once again the most important thing. That's the game that everyone needs to be fit and firing for. So we need to get them on the pitch now. Make mistakes now if you have to. If you're going to make a mistake, I'd rather the players made it in the Charity Shield than they made it at Stamford Bridge in 3 weeks' time. So I think Fabinho has to start once again, because like if he goes back into form, if he plays at his absolute best, then he is probably the best defensive midfielder in the world at the moment. So I think he starts. Naby Keita's had a great pre-season as well. He's finally starting to find his feet at Liverpool. I think what he really now needs is a strong run in that first team, week in, week out, where he can gradually just start working more and more with the regular first team players as well. He can work out his exact position in the side and show what he can offer as well. So I think he will be playing. And then I think on the right of midfield, this decision is mainly informed by the presence of Nico Williams at right back. I think it's going to be James Milner. Personally, I think if you were going for the best midfield you possibly could have at the moment, Gini Wijnaldum would be in there instead. But because of the fact it's quite early on in the season, and of course James Milner always comes back in absolutely tip-top condition. He's normally a few steps ahead of everyone else in pre-season. I think we saw that against Salzburg as well. He played that game like it was a competitive match, whereas other players were still ever so slightly off the pace. And also, of course, with Nico Williams potentially bombing forward, normally we'd have Jordan Henderson there, and in that situation I wouldn't be hugely worried about Nico at all, because Jordan Henderson is excellent at covering that right-back spot when Trent goes forward as well. He does it absolutely brilliantly, but with him not available, Milner has, of course, played as a fullback for Liverpool, albeit mostly on the left, but I think he's got the playing style and the work rate and the reading of the game and the understanding of those positions to take up that right back slot wherever necessary in a way that maybe I'm not sure Gini Wijnaldum can. And that's no slight on Wijnaldum. I'm not saying he's a bad footballer. I'm just saying he has different traits to James Milner. And like I said, if Trent was starting on the right, then I think Gini Wijnaldum would be the first choice midfielder on that side. But as it is, I'm expecting Williams to play, and therefore I'm expecting James Milner to play there to help cover him. And also, as a seasoned professional, as someone who likes to talk the youngsters through the games, we've seen it in the past where James Milner has played in League Cup games and FA Cup matches. He's there as the experienced head to be vocal, to coach the players through the match, and hopefully he can do a similar thing with Nico Williams tomorrow afternoon. And then ahead of them, I think we go with the first choice front three from the start. There are, of course, some shouts for Ryan Brewster to start, and I can certainly see why we'd want to do that, especially given the fact that this match is almost entirely going to inform our decision of whether or not he goes on loan. So maybe playing him for half an hour only is a little bit of an odd decision. So potentially I think Brewster gets 45 minutes either side of the half-time break, but I certainly think, given that Firmino has been starting with Salah and Mane either side, and once again it's this whole thing of the short amount of time we've got to prepare for the Premier League season, we need to be getting the first 11 on the pitch all together as much as we possibly can at the moment. So I think for that reason we have to start with Firmino and then Salah and Mane either side of him, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Ryan Brewster for more than just a 15 or 20 minute cameo later on in the game. So taking a look at Arsenal then, they don't have many massive problems with injuries necessarily at the moment. Bernd Leno has returned from the injury that he picked up right at the start of the restart. Of course, I think it was Martinez played in goal all the way through to the FA Cup final and had a very good FA Cup final as well. But it's looking like Bernd Leno will be coming back into the side. Like I said, they haven't got any huge injury problems, but their break was ever so slightly shorter than Liverpool's. Of course, they had to take that extra week for the FA Cup final, so they actually played their last competitive match of football this month. I think it was the first weekend of August when they played that game at Wembley against Chelsea, so they've had an even shorter break, and I think that may be factored into Mikel Arteta's plans. I think Arsenal fans have been saying that the fact that Liverpool are probably going to field a full strength 11 might annoy Arteta a bit, because by the looks of it, he wasn't planning to do so. Their pre-season has been slightly different. They haven't gone with the system Liverpool have done, where it's been the first choice 11 from the start and then essentially a team of second stringers in the second half or coming on later on in the games. They've tended to rotate an awful lot more, and that was potentially what Arteta wanted to be doing in this match. But of course, they are a tough team to play at the moment. They were in very, very good form towards the end of the season, and these were the kind of games that suited them very well. Of course, they played those games against Liverpool at the back end of the season, against us. They played against Chelsea in the cup final. They played against City in the semi-final, and all of those games they played very, very well. Elsewhere, against teams like Aston Villa, they struggled, but it really seems that Mikel Arteta has struck upon a formula that works for these big games, and you can, play it down as, oh, it's just part of the bus. It's just basically accepting that the players you have got are not as good as the players they've got, so you've got to kind of, play very tactically within yourself, and there is potentially some truth in that. I don't think Arsenal at the moment have got the capability to go toe-to-toe with Liverpool. They've been trying to do it for the last few years, and it's gone, tits up every single time. Every time they come to Anfield, they've been absolutely battered, and they tend to struggle against us at the Emirates as well. Of course, that wasn't the case necessarily in the league when we played them after the restart. They got that 2-1 win, but I think it's fair to say that Liverpool probably deserved to win that game. I think Arsenal only had 2 shots on goal, and those were shots that we gave them through shoddy defending. So of course their game plan worked. They sat back, they soaked up pressure, and they hit us on the break, and they caught us out with our trousers down in situations that maybe we wouldn't have been in if the game had been a little bit more high tempo and a bit more end to end, and they've been pushing up for more of the match. So I think this is another game where Mikel Arteta is going to be looking to test out that formula, because he's also been speaking about his ambitions at Arsenal and how he wants to win the Champions League in the next 3 years with them, I think, is what he said. So he's looking at these types of games against big teams, against opposition that is going to pile onto you and is going to put the pressure on. He wants to work out a formula that works for these games, that is going to win these matches on a regular, trustworthy basis. So I think it's going to be a tough match for Liverpool. I think it's going to play out very similar to the one at the Emirates. And of course, with the players having only just come back, they've only had a week of actual games in 11-a-side matches against, of course, Stuttgart and Salzburg. They're not as sharp as they maybe would be in about December or January or anything like that. I think we saw it last season in the Community Shield match where Mo Salah was flying in terms of his overall performance. He was just gliding past Man City defenders like they weren't there. But when it came to putting the ball in the net, he could not hit a barn door. He was slicing every shot this way and that, anywhere except between the 2 sticks where you're supposed to put it. So we could potentially see a repeat of the game at the Emirates, but hopefully Liverpool have got what it takes to get the game over the line. I think we've got to put that right. We've got to show that that game against them about a month and a half ago was just a little blip. It's not something we necessarily have to worry about. And going forward, Arsenal are not going to become a bogey team for Liverpool, because of course we've had very good results against them in the past. We've got them quite early on in the season as well, so we would like that kind of record to continue. But personally, I do think Liverpool are going to win the game. I don't think we're going to thrash Arsenal by any stretch of the imagination. I just think with the way Arsenal play now, they are a lot more compact. They're a lot more difficult to put a ridiculous amount of goals past. I can't see us scoring 5 against them or anything ridiculous like that. And of course, with the players not being 100%, Jurgen Klopp said himself he isn't expecting them to be at their absolute best. He doesn't think this is going to be their best performance that they will put in for the rest of the season. That's entirely understandable, but I do think Liverpool have got the quality and the strength in depth now as well. I think we've got enough options off the bench as the game goes on to get this one over the line and, right the wrong of the start of last season and lift that very lovely looking Community Shield at the end of the match. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. I will, of course, be back tomorrow with the post-match reaction after the game is concluded and Liverpool have hopefully lifted the trophy. Until then, don't forget to hit that like button down there if you enjoyed the video. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel in the past. Don't forget to follow at LSC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll see you again tomorrow evening. Until then, bye for now.